Rabbi, I'm glad you're here. I'm going to first read our opening prayer, and then I'm going to ask David to do his usual reading. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Amen. David, you're on.
Well, thank you. And I just logged in for the last part of your comment about Albuquerque, which we agree with 100%, with the one exception that our daughter and son-in-law and 2 grandchildren live there, so we get to go up there pretty often.
Very nice. Do they belong to Temple Albert?
No, they don't. In fact, they're Catholic. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Although we used to do seders with them. And we do Hanukkah with them.
Very nice.
Anyway, those of you who were at the rabbi study a few days ago, I did this quotation, which I'm going to repeat this morning. With everything that's going on in Ukraine, it's got to be really terrifying for everybody there and for all of us. And it makes us think a little bit about the state of our civilization. The civilization that allows us to murder 6 million Jewish people plus 6 million other people. And it allows us to think of the crumbling of our society and our civilization. But this civilization is the same one that produced Aristotle, Moses, Einstein, Galileo, and Vincent van Gogh. So today I have 2 quotations. The first one is from Psalm 30. It says, "Weeping may tarry for the night, but joy cometh in the morning." And from the poem about the called Prashana, written around 1840 by Taras Shevchenko, almost universally regarded as the Ukrainian version of Shakespeare. "The mighty Dnieper roars and bellows, the wind in anger howls and raves. Down to the ground it bends the willows, and mountain high lifts up the waves. The pale-faced moon picked out this moment to peek out from behind the cloud. Like a canoe upon the ocean, it first tips up and then dips down." Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Very, very nice. Well, what I wanted to do today was to go over a few things. Just to it's been a couple of weeks since we last met. So to refresh our memory, we are going to be reading in our chapter is Bo, and we're in Exodus 12. And I'd like to go back to verse 26 so that we can, we ended at verse 28 2 weeks ago. But if we go back to verse 26, this was the, if you will, the interlude of the story to talk about the Passover service. And it's very important to just go back a few lines to refresh our memory, some of the things we spoke about, and then we can get into our reading today. So David, if you could begin reading Exodus 12, verse 26 through 28.
I will be honored to do that, Marty. "And it shall come to pass, when your children shall say unto you, What mean ye by this service? That ye shall say, It is the sacrifice of the Lord's Passover, for that he passed over the houses of the children of Israel in Egypt. when he smote the Egyptians and delivered our houses. And the people bowed the head and worshiped. And the children of Israel went and did so, as the Lord has commanded Moses and Aaron, so did they.
Okay. Any other ideas that may have come to you that, yeah, I know we spoke about it. Uh, just to reiterate, one year at our family Passover, we had guests, and I put aside the Haggadah and I just asked the question, what does the Passover service mean to you? As opposed to, because that covers all of the Haggadah. It's the meaning behind the ritual. And we spoke about remembrance and the usual things, but what does it mean to us as a Jewish individual and a Jewish community? Yes, David.
Yeah, there's a lot of emotion and thought that went into your very question. And it begins from for me, from our family, when we had Seders, and I would actually fly into Montreal for the Seders in the pre-Wendy days. And Wendy is here, by the way. And
hi, Wendy.
he is doing better.
Good.
Anyway,
good.
The first thing that comes to mind is a joke that our family used to tell. Somebody tried to kill us. We won. Let's eat. That to me might be humorous, but it is not the story of Passover. The story of Passover to me is the story of the birth of freedom, the birth of a people that rose up and decided that they wanted their freedom and would have to work for it. And so therefore, for me, the Passover is a very emotional time where we try to get our lives together to lead fulfilling lives and to help ourselves, to help God in a way, so that we would do well, God would do well, and we would live lives we could be proud of.
For me, Marty,
Yes, Michael.
Yeah. As I got older, I would think about that. And it demonstrates that it should never be forgotten. That whole story should never be forgotten. And it's passed on every year, just like the Torah is passed on by rereading it. It's something that should be understood, that God is very much present in your life from one year to the next. And it's a reminder that it should never be forgotten. That's how I see it.
Very good. Thank you. Anyone else? This was part of the discussion. Yes, Helene, please.
The fact that children are involved every year is a testimony to God's knowledge that the intergenerational relationships, that's what keeps it going. The children learn from this. And without the intergenerational, what do you have? What do you have? So that's all I want to say. The children's question and what it means to us personally means that we have a future.
Very good. Very good. Anyone else? Yes, Don.
I'll be frank, I have mixed emotions about this because on the one hand, I fully understand how every year we celebrate that ancient event and get a chance to renew our gratitude for how long Jewish people have survived. The other side of the coin for me is that I'm deeply troubled when I read this carefully about how many people were slaughtered in this event that were non-Jews. Not just the Pharaoh and his entourage, but Egyptians who were blameless, really. They were working cheek by jowl with the Hebrews in the fields and making bricks. And it doesn't say anything about that. So I will continue to be troubled. I don't expect a resolution here. But I just, since it's a pretty open forum here, I thought I would just say that.
No, I think that's it's what everyone has said is very important. When we think of human tragedy, and as you're addressing, we can look at it as from the standpoint of doing bad things, evil, victimization, things like that. But on the other hand, if we look at the entire story as a rebirth, something to the future, okay, by recognizing that we can make a mistake, or that people can, we have to think before we act. This is the deeper meaning of Passover, to recognize the good, which is what we're focused, our usual focus, but also focus somewhat on the negative things that Don points out. But to learn from it. All these are learning experiences. They're not defeats. They're not rejections. They're not, if you look at it as a learning experience and trying not to repeat that error, that also is what 6 months, what is it, 6 months from Passover, you have the high holidays. You can change so that it gets you back in line as well. Yes, Don, you were going to comment a little further than Gail.
Yeah, and I just want to say, I don't pretend that I can really understand all this.
Yeah.
And if I may I read a very, very short prose poem that
Sure.
that kind of pointed me in the right direction when I was fretting over this during the week. I won't say who the poet was, but he's possibly my favorite. With God, there is no room for two egos. You say I, and he says I. In order for this duality to disappear, either you must die for him or he for you. It is not possible, however, for him to die, either phenomenally or conceptually, because he is, quote, he is the ever-living who dieth not. He is so gracious, however, that if it were possible, he would die for you in order that the duality might disappear. Since it is not possible for him to die, you must die so that he may be manifested to you, thus eliminating the duality. So that called attention to my inadequacy in addressing this issue. So I surrender my eye.
It's not an inadequacy.
No, it's not. But this is part of everything. The focus is not, if you think about Torah, the focus is not on I. The focus is on we as a community and our relationship to the community and with God. Yes, Rabbi, I'm going to, and I know
let Gail
okay,
go first.
sure.
Oh, I was just going to say my favorite quote, and I keep it at my bedstand. Nothing exists as a separate self. Nothing. Okay.
Right.
To get back to your question about Passover, this year in particular, I can't help but think, how are the Ukrainian Jews going to celebrate Passover? This must have a whole different feel for them this year. I don't know what to say more than that.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I can understand that feeling. Yes, Rabbi.
I want to make reference to, and it's not just semantics. People who are struggling with the questions that have been arising out of Marty's initial question. Jewish tradition, as I understand it, um, doesn't necessarily talk about Passover as the festival of freedom. That's a much more modern term.
Mm-hmm.
The classical phrase was the celebration of redemption,
Right.
and recognizing that Geulah is the Hebrew word. Recognizing that, I frequently look back at the writings of Franz Rosenzweig, who, when he wrote amidst his questioning of, as Don is mentioning, as others are talking about, as others that others had to suffer so that we could be free, or that we could be redeemed, we could participate in God's redemptive process for the world. Rosenzweig wrote within the atmosphere of World War I. So, not anticipating the tragedies and the horrors of what was to come. Um, but the questions have always been there, and draw the lesson, if you will, and maybe a little simplistic, but draw the lesson that, and we would be coming to it in another couple of weeks, I'm sure, in discussion, is that God looks down at the children of Israel who are rejoicing that they have come safely out of Egypt and through the Sea of Reeds, and they're rejoicing, and Miriam and all the people are singing and dancing and whatever, and God scolds them and says, how dare you turn this only into a celebration? My children have been dying, meaning the Egyptians and meaning the bystanders. And that's an overriding theme in Jewish history and literature and thinking, as trying to reconcile how we approach Passover in each and every one of our days.
Very good. Very good. Yes, Grace.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you. So the original question, if I recall it correctly, was what does Passover mean to you? And of course, I'm reading commentary, and I personally have learned more from my students than I have learned in any college class I ever took, right? They teach us. We are here to guide them as best we can. However, they teach us. The young man you see behind me, today is his birthday, and he is my Jewish godson. So I have to tell you, this child has taught me much. And the commemorative sequence that I get from the Passover is that we are to help our children understand, that we should be loyal to God, right? That loyalty should exist. And, he's going to let us know when we've done things wrong, and that, okay, it's time to make a sacrifice. And he's going to let us know in, his ways that, we can see it in a new light. And I think that speaks to the rebirth or the redemption, in a new light, because it's going to be a new day, a new, although we're looking, what at the future, which has been mentioned. So the new future is that our children, our children's children, whoever they are, will have learned something valuable from experiencing what God has invested in us to do. So I get a lot out of this, the good and the bad. And, it's like I mentioned before, war is terrible for both sides. There's no
Mhm.
winners. So anyway, that's just my personal take on it. And thank you.
You're welcome, and thank you. Don, before I go back to you, Larry, did you want to say anything?
Oh, sure. I didn't raise my hand.
Yeah,
But,
okay. Oh, go
when
ahead.
we-
And then,
we-
to Don, I wanted to give everyone a chance, and then I'll bring
Okay, thanks.
Don into it.
First of all, it should be mentioned and repeated often that this is the most celebrated holidays in the Jewish calendar. More people, even if they never go to a synagogue, will have a Passover Seder. But as we are mentioning the different contradictions or approaches, the one thing I read that struck me deeply is in the Confederacy, there were Jewish families who celebrated a Passover Seder and were served by slaves. And, you know, what is going on here? And how can we really understand how different people interpret things?
Good point. Very good point. You reminded me of a movie, The Price of Sugar. Okay, it was shown at the Jewish Film Festival, and you just reminded me of that.
Okay, I've seen a play where it was right after the Confederacy, during the war when it ended, and the celebration was the slave became Jewish because they take the religion of the slave owner. And the slave is the one that really organized the Seder, and they used hardtack because they did not have matzah. And it really recalled the whole meaning of
Right.
what Seder is all about. It was called The Whipping Man.
Ah, good title. Good title. Yes, Don.
Just a quick observation. To Gail's point about there are no entirely separate beings, there's one exception, cats.
Okay. Excellent. Okay. Any other comments? I can't. Yes, Michael, go ahead.
Could you see my hand, Marty? I've been up for a
Yes,
while.
I apologize. I didn't see it. No, I just
Okay.
noticed it. Okay.
Okay, thank you. There's an opposing side to what I spoke about before, and first I would say I certainly believe in God, and the miracles of the Passover. Why weren't they present during the Holocaust? In other words, if somebody said that the Holocaust proves there's no God, somebody said that, and say, look, we don't know what happened thousands and thousands of years ago, but we know what happened there at the Holocaust. Where was the Hebrew God during the Holocaust? It was there thousands of years ago, but we weren't there to see it. It's written, but we didn't see it. We all know presently because the Holocaust of the 1930s is not that long ago. It's not thousands of years ago. So people ask that. People would make it the case as, well, where was God? And I'm not talking about myself because I believe in God, but I'm just throwing that out as a comment and maybe a question.
Okay.
Good point.
That's good. Yes, Don.
Michael's point is something I kind of mull over and over again, as many people do. But I'm realizing that what we're reading now in the Exodus, that God and the Hebrews are displaying great power. And then great power was displayed by King Saul, King David, King Solomon. And then the temple was destroyed. And the Jews went underground until they were let back in by Persia, the Persians. And then so they built another temple, and then the Romans destroyed that one when the Jews were trying to display great power, and the Zealots fought back and they were defeated. And it seems to me that since then, Judaism has changed so much, because now it's kind of justice and mercy, not displayed in power, but displayed in surrender to God. Not weakness exactly, but surrender. And there has not been any great display of power since the second temple was destroyed. That's like 2,000 years ago. And then to Michael's point, it brings us all the way to the Holocaust, when it came near to extinction. So I don't understand that either, but it's clear that, to me anyway, that the destruction of the second temple just changed everything about Judaism. I guess we're still trying to understand that. That was a long rambling comment, wasn't it?
Okay, thank you. And David?
Actually,
Boy, it's Wendy.
Yeah,
Okay.
like I had said last time, this conversation is getting really pretty way out there, and again, pretty egocentric. It's like we're saying, where was God when everything bad happened to us? Well, where was God in the Spanish Inquisition? Where was he when ISIS was beheading everybody? Where is he right now with Ukraine? You know, and I feel like everything that happens, bad or good, is giving us some sort of a lesson, even if we can't figure it out. And sometimes David and I look at each other and go, is this God's way of just sort of eradicating everything and starting all over? It's just weird that we are not the only ones. This has been happening forever. And it's not fair. It's not good.
It's a very good point. Very good point. And I think that it is important to look at literature on both sides of the issue, not focus on one, because there were many people who focused on the other side. Think about maybe the state of Israel was a miracle. Rabbi, I know you had your hand up. Gail has her hand up too. Can I let Gail go first? Okay.
Oh.
Please, Gail.
Oh, I was just going to say, are you asking, does God take sides? Is that the question? Or
That's right.
you
Good
know,
point.
and I think the real, like I was saying before, that, you know, nothing exists as a separate self. And if you really buy that concept and you're part of God, the Holocaust was not caused by God, it was caused by man.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but, you know, don't get into this trap of God takes sides and favors, and that's very tricky territory.
Right. Good point. The rabbi was alluding to that as about it when he spoke about the Civil War. I think it was, oh no, Larry, you brought that up.
Larry,
That's right.
yeah.
Yes, Rabbi.
So three quick comments, if I can remember. I'm having trouble with remembering some things. One is an invitation that 2 months from now, near the end of April, in that series that I'm doing of Meet the Rabbis, the session in the end of April is actually on Yom HaShoah, is actually on Holocaust Memorial Day. And I'll be talking about Rabbi Leo Beck, who survived the Holocaust, served the German Jewish community during World War II, conducted seders in the concentration camps, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So number one is a plug. We'll look at some of the things that he wrote in response to the question that people are asking: where was God in the Holocaust?
Right.
Secondly, I don't remember. It's not Elie Wiesel, but it's one of Elie Wiesel's disciples who said, and just as Gail was saying, that God was not responsible for the Holocaust. Man's responsible. And where was God's response? Where was God's answer? In those, the Lamed Vav, the righteous people, the righteous of all nations, who saved Jews, who gave the proper response. That's one Hasidic kind of answer to where was God in the Holocaust, crying and suffering along with us, but also inspiring others to stand up and be human. The third is that to those who say, well, we must curse God for allowing the Holocaust, by definition, then you have to say, and we must bless God for every good thing that has happened, whether it's to Jews or to any other group of people. And we tend to forget that second part. When the bad things happen, we yell and scream and curse God. When the good things happen, we might quickly say thank God, but then we move on and we take credit for it ourselves. So that's a classic response to the question also.
Isn't there a prayer for what we do not have in Judaism?
I'm not sure I understand.
That even when we do not have something, that can be a blessing.
Well, it's an interpretation. I think what you're referring to is an interpretation of the threefold blessing. May God bless you and keep you. And so may God bless you with things that you desire, but may God keep you from having those things that you desire overwhelm you.
Okay, thank you.
That might be what you're referring to.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes, Helene, please. And Gail, I'm going to focus on Helene because of time.
No, of
and
course.
then I'll go to you, Gail.
No
Thank
problem.
you. I'm sitting here looking at this fancy curtain that my lady fixed for me. I said, why this? Let's show how I've been healing from the break my hip from being in the hospital. Why this? And I thought, this is a celebration. But think of the Seder. Think of the celebration at the end of the Seder. Think of the kids are all looking for you know what the Seder is. There's always a joyous ending to it. Why not celebrate today, this moment?
Right.
And that's why I look at this. That's ridiculous, Helene. Why did you put that? Let her put, she said, we are celebrating your being recovered there, and we don't need to see the negative parts of it.
There you go.
I thank you for seeing what you do.
That's very good.
Thank you. Thank you, Helene. Yes, Gail.
Oh, I really need to address the rabbi about this. I have always had uncomfortable feelings about Purim because we're celebrating someone being hanged, and there's a lot of death and destruction at the very end of the Megillah, when the bad people are killed.
You may have noticed on Wednesday that I didn't read that.
I noticed that. And that's why I was happy to go attend this year, because I'm very uncomfortable with that part of Purim. I just, it's not where I like to go. So I hope I'm not alone in this feeling.
You are definitely not alone. There are volumes of concern about that, and it harkens back to the question we were asking before about all the multitude of Egyptians, innocent Egyptians who died. So
That's right. So let's see how all of these thoughts are based on Torah. Okay, as we read as much as we can get to today and next week. Okay. So if there's someone else who would like to read, that's fine. Otherwise, going once, going twice. David, you're on.
Okay, thank you.
Why don't you read 29 through 32?
I shall do that. And it came to pass at midnight that the Lord smote all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh that sat on his throne, unto the firstborn of the captive that was in the dungeon, and all the firstborn of cattle. And Pharaoh rose up in the night, he and all his servants, and all the Egyptians, and there was a great cry in Egypt, for there was not a house where there was not one dead. And he called for Moses and Aaron by night, and said, Rise up, get you forth from among my people, both ye and the children of Israel, and go serve the Lord, as you have said. Take both your flocks and your herds, as ye have said, and be gone, and bless me also. And the Egyptian, okay.
Okay, that's it. So, any comments, discussion, questions about what David just read? So any ideas come to mind with the death of all of the Egyptian firstborn? It's not just the children, the current children, it was generational. The firstborn of every generation that was still alive was killed, and including the cattle. Okay, or it is in verse 29. So even the Pharaoh is his family is also being involved in this ritual, if you will. Any comments? So we should ask the question, was the Pharaoh the firstborn, if he survives this? Okay, David, that's a windy
This
hand.
is a windy hand, and here she comes. The next voice you shall hear.
Well, if we look at the movie The Ten Commandments as sort of our guide, this that final plague, it directly affected Pharaoh. You know, the guy who says everything, it's all about me, and now suddenly his son is gone. And I don't think the Pharaoh was the oldest, because didn't he have a sister, or that was his father's sister that picked up Moses? Yeah, I guess it wasn't, but now he's affected, and he lost the next heir to Egypt, and that to him was critical. And so now he goes, okay, now you hurt me. We're going to do something.
Very good points. Very good points. Yes, Rabbi.
but what is it that he's going to do? I mean, for the first time, he refers to them as Bnei Israel. It's the first time that he recognizes them as they're having a generational history, and they can be called the Israelites. But he doesn't say, "I'm freeing you, get out of here." He says, "Go worship the Lord," like you said.
Right.
He said that the very first confrontation.
That's right.
Is he setting them free? Or does he still think they're only just going to go for 3 days journey?
Well, and he also asked for a blessing, which I find really interesting.
Very good. So what does everyone think?
Well, except that again, the history is there. That is it when when the Pharaoh meets Jacob, when Joseph brings his father to the Pharaoh, and that father, he asks for a blessing
Right.
from Jacob. So yeah, he recognizes that the importance of that.
But is he asking a blessing as a favor, for doing the favor of letting him go? Is that what's implied there, or is it? I'm not sure.
Yeah, is it in addition to all these other things,
Right.
and please bring a blessing upon me, or as a result of all of these
Yeah.
things,
Yeah.
it will be seen as a blessing upon me.
Like a thank me by blessing me.
Yeah, or just finally, I'm washing my hands of you guys.
Well, what do you think? The rabbi asked a very important question. He's not, there's one sentence in here that if you look at, he's not really letting the people go away. He's letting them to, as the rabbi pointed out, to worship and then come back, because it says, "Up and depart from among my people. Use you and the Israelites with you. Go worship the Lord as you said." As you said. So it's not just 3 days that he's anticipating they will be back. Now, we have had this discussion before, and how we can sometimes, hi Suzanne, it is it's very important. Did Moses say we will be back? We just want to go away for 3 days and we'll be back? Or did he say we're going away for 3 days and Pharaoh says you will return?
No, I think this time he's saying go and be gone and be done with it.
Well, I'm going to comment about as you said, the 3 words, as you said. And that means Pharaoh's interpretation. I'll let them go and they're going to come back. I'm adding that in. And I don't want you to forget that I mentioned that before. Because we'll see by his actions that his actions wind up being the same. He reverts to his actions. So I think that we can interpret this one of 2 ways. Go and go forever, or go but you're supposed to come back.
Now, Marty,
Yes.
Marty, it's chapter 8, starting at verse 21. If you want to, look at the exact reference that you're talking about.
Okay. He's go and sacrifice to your God within the land. Okay. In other words, he's implying that it would not be right to do, and Moses says it would not be right. We have to go outside of the land of Egypt. So we must go a distance of 3 days into the wilderness and make our sacrifice. But what is Pharaoh's response? I will let you go to sacrifice, but do not go very far. Okay? And so the Pharaoh is setting terms to this too. He's bargaining. He's trying to bargain.
Yeah.
Yes.
Were you calling on me?
Yes, Gail.
Oh, you didn't say my name.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
It's
I
my
was just-
fault.
Absolutely. So I would say this must have been the most frightening plague of all, because not because it was the Pharaoh's, firstborn that died, but because this was an unseen thing. This wasn't like locusts. This was like, our pandemic here, the unseen creepy thing that's killing people. That must have been really, really frightening.
Yeah, I think it would for anyone to see that. Any other comments? Yes, Larry.
Okay, it was so frightening. In 1230, it says, there is not a house in which there is not a dead man. But that, if it's the killing of the firstborn, does that mean every household has children?
That's why I said it was generation. It involved all generations. Okay, it's not just children; it's the adults too, who
But
might have
only
been the
if the adult
firstborn.
was a firstborn.
If they were the firstborn of their parents and so forth, going back, whoever was alive, they were involved too. So even if the kids had moved on out of the household, if the father or mother were firstborn, kaboom, they would have done it. Grandparents, the works. So it would have been a lot of people, as Don pointed out
But
earlier.
not every household fits this definition.
Which household?
It said someone in every household was killed. If they did not have children, and if they were not firstborns, they would have survived.
It's possible. It's possible if they're that elderly, because remember, you have to think in terms of lifespan at that time too. Okay, it's different from today, totally different from today. And the need for having children, was very important. So I guess you're right. But scientifically speaking, okay. But with the short lifespan, most households would have someone who fell in that category.
Right, that's most, it's not every.
Yeah.
Okay,
I have to accept what you say. Any other comments? Okay, well, we're moving ahead. So verse 33. Oh, wait a minute. Wait. I just wanted to double check something. Okay, any comments about the Egyptian leaders? Okay, the Pharaoh and his courtiers. They were asleep and they were awakened by hearing the cries from all of these households and I would assume people within the palace. Any comments about that? Do you think that they were taken by surprise, or this was just a matter of fact, or what? And what about the Jewish people who are being spared? Do you think they may have heard the cries? You don't have to answer these questions, just to think about them. Okay, David, please read on from verse 33.
And the Egyptians were urgent upon the people to send them out of the land in haste, for they said, "We are all dead men." And the people took their dough before it was leavened, their kneading troughs being bound up in their back, and all of them. The kneading troughs there's some secret here that I'm not seeing. You know? And the people took their dough before it was leavened, their kneading troughs being bound up in their clothes upon their shoulders. And the children of Israel did according to the word of Moses. And they asked of the Egyptians jewels of silver and jewels of gold and raiment. And the Lord gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians. And so they let them have what they asked. And they despoiled the Egyptians.
Okay, any comments? Yes, Gail.
Technical point. The bread actually was leavened. It just had not risen. However, let me tell you, if you take some dough that's not leavened, it hasn't risen yet, and you wrap it up in a bowl and you put it on your shoulder from the body heat, trust me, it's going to rise.
So maybe it was hardtack. Somebody mentioned that before.
Welcome back, Ricky.
Oh, thank you. I avoided an ER stop today. They were about ready to send me in again. But we forced a drop of heparin, a drop of heparin, a drop of
Right.
heparin. And finally, slowly, and now I'm back on
Good.
track. I clog
Good.
up. My blood clogs. I don't know. But I'm back. I'm not in the ER.
Okay, that's good. That's
Yes.
good. Yes, Don. Don, you're muted.
I know.
Okay.
So I'm reading through this. I don't see any clear connection with this latest assault that it's connected with, in Egyptians' mind, with God. It just kind of happens, and at midnight. And of course, I wonder too, how do they know it's midnight? They really didn't have any clocks at the time. But it just happened, and there's an assumption that this was the Hebrew God who caused this to happen. And then immediately, all the Egyptians lend out their jewels and silver to, if they did make that connection, why they did that, unless it was they thought they were somehow bribing the Hebrews to call it off. The whole thing is kind of convoluted.
Okay, first, the comment you made at the middle of the night. And anyway, once it gets dark, you can do anything and call it the middle of the night.
Yeah,
So it doesn't necessarily have to be at the strike of midnight, like for Cinderella. It could be anywhere from sometime during the night.
Yeah, it's a problem with my translation. It says midnight, but of course it probably, the original, I don't know the Hebrew, but the Hebrew probably says in the night.
It says halfway through the night.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
So, but, it depended on your watch, your individual watch. That maybe some use daylight saving time. I don't know, but it's a span. It's a span of time.
But just trying to imagine, the text says it's at least one person died in every household.
Right.
And trying to imagine how in the middle of all that, the Hebrews come knocking on the door saying, can you spare your jewelry and gold?
Okay, that if you, I just for the sake of humor, okay. If you read in verse 34 that David read, so the people took their dough. And that's why I said with humor. And then before it was leavened, in response to Gail, it may have been before they added the yeast. I don't know.
Or was it sourdough?
Okay, yes, Larry.
Okay, so that's why we have unleavened bread during Passover. We call it matzah. My question is, what's the difference between matzah that we can see on the supermarket shelf and matzah that is kosher for Passover? They both have wheat and water. What is the difference besides a rabbi certifying?
Yeah,
this is-
and the pots, the ovens, whatever that they used that are used for them. You
Yeah, I
know,
would
again, whether
assume-
it's specifically kosher for Pesach or not.
I guess you'd have to show that they've been scrubbed down so that no trace of the
Right.
leavening could be there, or you have separate pots or whatever. You know, but that
And
would have to
and
include all the
utensils.
utensils
Right,
used.
right.
That's
And then
right.
you even have there's even a third grade,
Right.
a higher grade
Yeah.
of really glad kosher called shmura matzah. That from the time that the grain has been harvested, it's been watched. Someone pays, a watch guard to make sure all the time that every step of the way that it's never interacted with anything that's not kosher for Pesach.
And so the next time you have matzah, as I wrote, next time you have matzah brie, that's Shamora.
Oh.
No, but seriously, it is something to, that's a very interesting thing. I think it would be interesting to
A close friend of mine, pardon me, Mark, close friend of mine back in Michigan years ago said it's all a matter of economics. Somebody came up with the idea, I can if I I can charge 3 times the amount of money for a box of matzah if I say that it's been guarded and da 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 da. So okay.
That's true. Rabbi, is there anything about the etrog at Passover, at Sukkot?
I don't know what.
Are there
what-
any specific things about the etrog, about how it
Well, yeah, it has
grows?
to have a certain size of stem and
Stem,
things like
that's
that.
right.
Right.
So there are certain.
I thought you were talking
facets.
about, is there an etrog on the Seder plate? And I said,
No,
that one I hadn't heard yet. Right. Okay.
Okay, is
That's
there a
another fruit.
difference-
That's another
Okay.
fruit. Yes, Larry.
Is there a difference between a K and an OU as far as certification?
Well, K is much more generic. It doesn't necessarily mean that it has been authenticated by a rabbinic court or a kashrut council or something like that. OU is the Orthodox Union. That means that yes, the mashgiach, or the one who determines if it's kosher or not, under their employ. It's like having the good housekeeping seal. That someone actually authenticates it.
And then there's a million other heshers to watch out for.
There what?
There are a million other heshers out there also. I mean, the local-
Yeah, right. Yeah. But if it's a K, or if it's a P, or if it's just like that, that's just kind of generic. It doesn't mean that there's no official certification with it. Marty, can I come
Sure,
back
please,
to
please.
okay, so there's a midrash, I don't have it in front of me, but there's a midrash that talks about the Egyptian people, and they're divided into 3 groups. There are the groups who allied themselves with Pharaoh, and when the Israelites came to ask, can we? And the debate is, were they asking to borrow, pots and whatever? And yes, if they were just going out for 3 days to sacrifice, they needed some utensils and things like that, which they didn't own as slaves. So That's one thinking. But one group of Egyptians is the ones who said, no, you're causing such trouble and da da da. And those are the Egyptians, especially who died or someone in their family died. Then there's the second group that supported the Israelites and lent them or gave them what they needed and blessed them, if you will, like Pharaoh says, "Bless me as you go." And then there's the third group that becomes the ones who go with the Israelites. That later on they're called the Erev Rav, the mixed multitude, who go with the children of Israel. We're whether we call them refugees or not, but they left along with. Many of them wind up quote unquote converting.
Thank you very much. Yes, Gail.
I have a question for the rabbi on the meaning of the word in verse 36. And the Lord had put the people's favor in the Egyptians' eyes, and they lent to them.
Right.
Is it interpreted as lent or as something else?
Give your translation again of the whole verse.
Okay. And the Lord had put the people's favor in the Egyptians' eyes, and they lent to them, and they despoiled Egypt.
Mine's very different.
Yeah, it's because it actually goes back to verse 35. So the children of Israel did as Moses had said, and the Hebrew really is, and they requested of the Egyptians these articles of silver and gold, and whatever, and then the 36 says that the Egyptians, or among the Egyptians, there were those who responded favorably. Okay. Vayinatzlu, the last phrase in 36, Vayinatzlu at Mitzrayim. This translation says they stripped the Egyptians, which doesn't sound as if it was a polite request. Okay, as if they're claiming, aha, we're the victors, and we can take the spoils. But again, I don't have all the midrash and the commentaries here, but the Hebrew word that my translation says that they stripped the Egyptians also comes from the verb that means to save. Okay, S-A-V-E. And so that leads into that midrash that those who did participate and loaned or gave the utensils to the Israelites, they were saved from the 10th plague. So again, what the actual narrator's story was, I don't know. But as Don's been saying, and as so many of us have said through generations, that there are troubling aspects to this story.
Yeah.
And and we're not the first ones to question it. So the rabbis and the linguists try to look at exactly the words and what does it mean, or what may we infer. Might have been a play on words, but what can we infer about the actual story?
Good point. Yes,
Grace has a story she wants to tell.
Yes, I was just going to say that. Okay, thank you, Grace.
Okay, so you know that I'm a heathen, right? Some people call it different. Some people call it strange or weird. I'm all those things, and I celebrate that. So I'm shopping with my boyfriend. He's a Jew, and he's the father of that young man right there. Anyway, before Justin was born, we dated, and I had this delicious meal I used to prepare that he liked, and it was quiche. And we have to drive 30 miles into town because I'm living on a ranch and 30 miles back. So we go into town, and this man, I always loved shopping with him because it was funny. He read every label, right? Label on the yogurt container, labels on, what kind of meat we would purchase, or the eggs, or the cream, or the whatever. And so I've got my list. I'm a list person. When I shop, I'm on a mission. And we were in the grocery store cart, I'm putting things in the cart, and I had forgotten something. So I left him over by the eggs and the yogurt. I said, please stay with the cart. We're almost done. And I walked away to go back to get something that I had forgotten. And when I come back to where he was, he had abandoned the cart. He was a few feet away from the cart. I could see that it was our cart, and he was over reading labels on the yogurt containers. And so I very quickly looked around, and I snuck up and I grabbed the shopping cart and moved it. I moved it down the aisle, and I stood with the cart behind me at the end of the aisle as he became befuddled. He turns around, he's looking for the cart, he got panicked, and I'm over here hiding behind these tall bottles of juice or whatever they were, and I'm laughing hysterically. So he goes over to this other cart, and there was a little old lady kind of next to the cart, and he's looking at her cart, and she goes up and she smacks him, and she says, "That's my cart." And so she takes her cart away from him, and he turns around and he's befuddled. By this time, I'm just in hysteria. I'm laughing. I'm just having a good time with this because he was a lot of fun. We had a great time together. His mother loved me. She was one interesting lady, and it was just one of those things. You were talking about labels and looking at the K or the OU, the Orthodox Union, on whatever, products that we purchase, maybe for Seder, maybe something I always keep in my home. And it just reminded me of Harris David is his name. He always read labels, and I really didn't understand why, but I got him back because it would take forever. I want to go in and get out. And he would just take his time and read the labels. So it was just a fun occurrence. I thought it might be fun to share it with you. Thank you.
It is a good story.
And I'm a terrible person. I shouldn't have done that.
What we should all be asking Grace, how did he respond to her? What is his response? You shouldn't have done that to me. Did he hit her on the hand, playfully?
Oh, no. You mean what his response to me was, or to the
doing
the
this
lady?
to him?
He told me I was a terrible person and a big jokester.
Coyote. Very good story. Well, any other comments about what we were reading? Well, let's go on to verse 32nd.
37, right?
37.
Oh, I thought you said 32nd.
Oh, 37.
You want me to read?
Sure, go ahead.
The Israelites journeyed from Ramesses to Succoth, about 600,000 men on foot, aside from children. Moreover, a mixed multitude went up with them, and very much livestock, both flocks and herds. And they baked unleavened cakes of the dough that they had taken out of Egypt, for it was not leavened, since they had been driven out of Egypt and could not delay, nor had they prepared any provisions for themselves.
Okay. Any comments? Well, this sort of answers Gail's question about that. Anything else? Any other comments? Well, this also supports what the rabbi pointed out about some of the Egyptians coming with. Okay. Yes, Dawn.
was going to ask the rabbi for the Hebrew translation of the mixed multitude.
Good point.
What,
Well, there are all kinds of guesses. Um, they could have been uh, friends, they could have been allies, they could have been just those that wanted to come along. Again, it's usually translated as the mixed multitude. Um, uh, that they could have been a fifth column. We just don't know. It's the only official reference to the hangers on. There are all kinds of speculative stories and theories later on of some of the people who challenge Moses, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it's kind of a given. It's um, one of those opportunities in the Torah that everybody kind of assumes that they know what they're talking about when they really don't. Because it only appears that one time. It must have been very familiar. The term or the category must have been very familiar to everybody hundreds, if not thousands of years ago. It just means something totally different now. And again, like if Grace has her story, so Erev Rav is the Hebrew.
Right.
Okay. Literally, Erev, I think Erev is evening. Okay. And Rav can be much or many, but Rav is also a rabbi. So at seminary, at rabbinical school, if you are if you are in preparation for ordination, you are an Erev Rav. It's like Erev Rosh Hashanah. It's like right before the holiday. So if you're an Erev Rav, it's the time before you become a Rav. So somebody didn't know that. I don't remember exactly when it occurred, but in Cincinnati during rabbinical school, somebody wasn't familiar with the phrase. And we referred to someone else or one of our classmates as an Erev Rav, and he looked and he said, "Joe's a mixed multitude? What does that mean?"
Isn't that like a prelude? A prelude.
Yeah, it could be
Yeah.
a prelude, like the evening is the prelude to the next day, kind of thing. That's where that comes from. What the connection is, however, to the Aravim, to the Arabs, that's where the word Arab comes from. That I don't know. We'll have to turn to the anthropologists for that.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, Ricky.
I just want to read that comment in my Bible. The mixed multitude. Non-Israelites, most likely members of other enslaved groups in Egypt,
Right. That's similar to
Yes,
what I have.
it could
Yeah.
be.
show the presence of such groups, including Semites and Nubians. So
Okay.
that's just what my little, oh, wait a minute, let me check this one.
Okay. Yes, Larry. While Ricky is looking something up.
Okay, 38 according to Alta. Umberto Casuto plausibly suggests that the Hebrew Erev Rav has no component that means multitude. Then in parentheses, King James Version, mixed multitude, but rather that the last syllable is not an independent word, but a duplication of the ultimate syllable of the main word. Thus, Erev Rav, which is the Hebrew formation for pejoratives, the English
Yeah,
riffraff.
Right.
Right.
Close.
Riffraff, hodgepodge, mishmash.
Yeah,
Right.
So, right. Something like that.
According to Rashi, a mixed multitude, a multitude of people of various nationalities converted to Judaism and accompanying the Jews out of Egypt. That's Rashi.
That's Rashi, but there's no Torah justification
Right.
to say that they all converted.
Just
Right.
moving.
Well, that they joined in the march, but they didn't necessarily join the people.
Gotcha.
It's
Yeah.
that's right. So it's good that we're thinking now about the different words. We've been doing this all along. What we've been doing, we've basically been doing a continuing drosh. Looking at everyone else's commentaries and coming up with our own interpretations as well. And so it's a different, it again is a different way of looking at Torah and bringing in lots of different commentary. So it adds a lot to the substance that we go through. Any other comments?
I'm looking at a Christian Bible, 1238, mixed intermarried. I don't see any hint of that.
Okay.
The Hebrew
Okay.
calls the fourth plagues flies. Don't ask me where they got that.
No, in Hebrew, the fourth plague is arov.
Oh,
Okay, so they're connecting arov to erev, which is, erev can be evening, erev can be a mixture.
yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, they're using mixed, intermarried.
Now, I was surprised that nobody had mentioned before about the cattle. Why is it spelled out the cattle specifically in Torah that the firstborn in the cattle also died? It goes back a little bit.
Yeah, I was going to say, didn't we discuss that? And wasn't it that they worship cattle?
Exactly. It was one of their major gods as well. That's right. So this was also to remind everyone, that your major gods are being affected by this as well. So any other comments?
Oh, Marty?
Yes,
I had
please,
heard,
Rabbi.
just occurred to me. I had heard somewhere, I don't remember the source, that in addition to, yes, that the cattle were considered sacred by some of the Egyptians, also that to offer a sacrifice, not in some of the people's cults, that to offer the sacrifice of the firstborn, because Israel rejects that, but to offer the firstborn of any particular species or whatever, that was the highest kind of sacrifice that you could offer. There was something special about the firstborn, and so if the firstborn was already had perished in the plague, because you're telling those people that they can't offer the choicest sacrifice, you're denying that to them. I don't remember what that source was, but I heard that somewhere.
We're going to be talking about that repetitively with the sacrifices and which ones are sacrificed, and even in our own history, and redemption. What has to be what is done if you're not going to do that. So this is going to be a theme that is recurrent. So what the rabbi is addressing, it will be a very important comment. Yes, Don.
There may have been some connection. Well, I know there was a connection at that time between Egypt and the civilization in the Indus Valley, the bordering India, and where Hinduism was beginning to gain a foothold, and where cattle are, even to this day, are sacred. So I wonder if that was there at the time. I don't know. I'm guessing.
I can't really, but maybe so. I don't know.
I'm muting.
Any other comments? Well, we're making a lot of headway. So if David, why don't we go back to you? Oh, yes, Grace. I'm sorry. Wait a minute. Michael, you had your hand up before, and I apologize. No, not this time. Okay, Grace.
Okay, thank you. So at the last portion of verse 39 states, nor had they prepared any provisions for themselves. Explain it to me. So they didn't, I mean, I knew they had to leave in a hurry, and they originally, everybody's questioning was, they're gonna let us be gone for 3 days, or are we leaving forever? I'm sure that because of all the multitudes and the mixed, married, unmarried, however they were, why they had no provisions for themselves. They had herds and cattle and probably goats and chickens, but all they had was the unrisen bread, the unleavening of the bread. So this spongy dough, for lack of words, what does the statement there mean?
Okay, any comments? Yes, Rabbi.
Yeah, we don't know what it means. Does it mean that they had such total trust in God that they didn't need to prepare? Does it mean the opposite, that they didn't have enough faith in God and therefore they saw no need to prepare because they didn't really see the Exodus coming? Or does it just reflect the fact that as slaves they just lived day to day, and whatever happens happens, and we'll somehow make it succeed? I'm not sure.
Perhaps all of
Good
those
one.
things, with the
Right. Yeah.
many different types of people that were there, primarily the Jews. But I'm just curious. I wasn't sure I understood what it meant to tell us.
Okay. I have a commentary in my version, but I know Gail and Larry have their hands up. Gail, ladies first. I'm a chauvinist. Go ahead.
Oh.
Ladies first.
Oh,
Yeah.
I haven't been called that in a long time. Let's see. So it says that when they were talking to the Egyptians, they were asking for silver and gold and garments, not food, none of this, not tents. Just so if you're going to go off in the desert and you're going to take money, seems odd. Seems an odd thing to ask for,
Yeah.
doesn't it?
Yeah. There, which opens up for other midrash.
Well,
okay,
I can see where that's
try
going.
to answer
Yeah.
your question. To try to answer your question, yes, Larry.
Okay, regarding the killing of the firstborn of cattle,
Okay.
I'd like to bring us back to Genesis 4, number 3. It was after passing of days that Cain brought from the fruit of the soil a gift to Yahweh. And as for Abel, he too brought from the firstborn of his flock, from their fat parts. Yahweh had regard for Abel and his gift. So I think that's significant background to what's happening now.
Okay. Very good. Very good. Yes, Rabbi.
The classic, not the humorous, but the classic response to Gail's question and whatever is they needed the gold, silver, money, whatever to trade with the nomads and the caravans that they would encounter on their journey. Yeah.
I have another commentary here. This is Rabbi Plout's comment. So the people who were caught unprepared, having apparently expected the Exodus at a later time, because they still had not yet been told everything. Okay. So you have different interpretations here. And in the any other comments? So questions, let's read on. Verse 40.
Okay. Now the time that the children of Ricky, do you want to do it?
Yeah, I thought it was, okay.
Okay, it doesn't,
The
either
Israelites-
one, I'll let you guys hash it out.
Well, I think he had to read the whole first hour while I was away, so I figured
Okay, so go ahead.
I'd up a little bit. The length of time that the Israelites lived in Egypt was 430 years. At the end of the 430th year, to the very day, all the ranks of the Lord departed from the land of Egypt. That was for the Lord a night of vigil to bring them out of the land of Egypt. That same night is the Lord's one of vigil for all the children of Israel throughout the ages. So they're saying that the 430 years is one night for God. It was one night of vigil.
Okay.
I think that's what it said.
Well, there's been a lot of discussion about this. First, before I'm sure in each one's commentaries, they have something written by whoever the author is of their, of their version. Any comments about the 430 first?
Well, mine says that it's compatible with the 400 years of slavery and oppression predicated in Genesis, assuming the oppression began 30 years after Israel arrived in Egypt. I mean, that's one. And then there's a however, so I let other people. However, well, it's also going into the J or the E version.
Go ahead, please.
However, the J-E or E, however, states that the Israelites would return in the fourth generation of living there, a statement compatible with the fact that Moses is the great-grandson of Levi, who went down to Egypt. If a generation is the period between a man's birth and the birth of his first child, these two passages are hard to reconcile. Even assuming a generation of 40 years, although 20 to 25 is more likely, 4 generations would be no more than 160 years. The Septuagint, the Sumerian Pentateuch, and the Midrashish traditions minimize the problem by including in these figures the time the patriots lived in Canaan, starting with the covenant of Genesis chapter 15, or the birth of Isaac. Okay, anyway, it goes on and on and on through that. Anyway, looks like they're trying to justify the numbers.
Okay.
Rationalize the numbers or whatever you want to use.
Yeah, it's hard, but
Yeah.
you point out that there may be a discrepancy. Any other commentaries? I know Gail has her book open and Larry has his. What do they have to say? Larry has 2 books. He's opening. Go ahead, Gail. What does your book have to say?
On what particular point?
The number of years.
Oh, it doesn't, there's no commentary on this.
Okay.
Okay, I have from Fox, 30
Please.
years and 400 years. The numbers are patterned as usual. Although this total disagrees with Genesis 15:13, for instance, which reckons it as 400 years. The differences seem to be more over which pattern number to use and not the historical exactitude. So, does it not much of a help?
Another source I have, although the verse gives a duration of 430, it is clear that the nation could not have been in Egypt that long, for the lifetimes of Kehoth, who came with Jacob, and his son Amram total only 270 years. And Amram's son Moses was 80 at the time of the. Let's see, Rambam cites this chronology as an illustration of how prophecies are often understood completely only after they come to pass. Until the Exodus, it was not known if the 400 years were to be dated from the prophecy to Abraham, the birth of Isaac, Jacob's descent to Egypt, or the beginning of the Egyptian servitude. The sizable number of the tribe of Ephraim convinced that the 400 years began with the covenant, attempted a mass escape 30 years before the Exodus, and many were slaughtered. That's enough.
Okay. Any other comments?
Ooh,
Well, what is the life expectancy of a slave back then?
what, 25, 30 years if they're lucky.
Much less,
Yeah.
much less. Remember, they started in childhood.
Yeah.
So many of them died even before the age when they could have children.
Oh.
Hmm.
Mm.
Okay. And what about somebody who has children? Okay. When does puberty occur? Well, back then, it may have been 13, a little bit older. Okay. And their life expectancy in slavery may not have been very great.
Okay.
So by the time you start taking that into account, it changes things, and it may be 300 or 400 generations, not looking at it from the hundreds of the people who were not slaves, the hundreds of years that were not slaves. I don't know. Yes, please, Ruth Ann.
No, I was just going to say and thinking, based on what you were just talking about, the importance of the firstborn. You didn't know there would be a secondborn.
That's right.
So that really made the first, especially if the firstborn survived infancy. There was no guarantee that any other child that would have been born would have
Correct.
survived. So, hey, you got to go with what you got.
Yeah. So it may, but the whole concept, we have to think about what is the life expectancy. By the way, when we talk about life expectancy, in modern times, and by modern times, I'm going to go back all the way back. What was the life expectancy in the 1930s?
I think it was 62 or 60.
No.
Wow.
What was the average death at that time?
45.
45.
In the 30s?
45 is
No,
closer.
I was going to say around 50, maybe.
Why do you think they said set the retirement age for Social Security to be 65?
65.
Nobody would live that long.
How many people would have lived to be 65?
Right.
Okay. So think about these things. And so, yes, Gail.
I was just going to comment, and women died in childbirth in great numbers
Yes.
too. I mean,
Yes.
And these young girls that gave birth, they were probably married at 15, 16, a lot of them didn't survive or got some horrible, I won't even go into some of the nasty things that happen giving birth at that age.
I understand why large families were important.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good point, Gail. Yeah, Ricky had her hand up, and then Larry.
I've got to tell you the story of a scene in a TV movie that so impressed me, and it was probably 20, 30 years ago. Mom is up at the family graveyard, and her little 4 or 5-year-old daughter comes up and joins her and asks who are all these gravestones. And this is your brother, Johnny. He lived 3 days. This was your sister, Mary, who lived 2 years. This was, and names everybody there. And the little kid says, the little girl's about 4 or 5, says, "Mommy, am I past dying age?"
There you go.
That just so struck me that I've always remembered that line, "Am I past dying age?"
So I want to, go, Larry, please.
Okay. It is for all these reasons that in Genesis, there are about 12, 13 references to be fruitful and multiply.
That's right.
But then also we had Thomas Malthus at just about 1800 with his theory that human reproduction, it's geometric, food production, arithmetic. And to talk about population demographics, today we're just about 8 billion, and the prediction is to 2050 to go up 25% to be about 10 billion. And now we have to worry about carrying capacity.
That's right. That is very correct. Yes, Don.
Going back to the text, the gold standard for time is the Egyptian dynasties, because they kept very careful records of who was pharaoh down through the years. So if we know who was pharaoh at the time of Joseph, and we know who was pharaoh at the time of the Exodus, I realize we don't exactly, but there must be somebody who's done a pretty good guesstimate of whether the 430 years corresponds to the Egyptian records of those dynasties. I don't know.
I don't know the answer to that.
Somebody must have done this.
Lynn Lee, it's too bad that Lynn's not with us this morning, because that's the Egyptologist that's her area. I'm going to have to excuse myself, folks. I wish everyone a Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
And we'll see you soon.
Yep.
Take care. So what was the average life expectancy in the 1960s?
50, 55?
Excuse me?
Oh, I was just guessing, 50?
Yeah,
55.
it rose. It started to rise. And why did that rise?
Penicillin.
Yeah.
Well, yes, but there's another very good reason.
I think
What happened in the around 1950?
Was it the invention of insulin?
Nope.
No.
When medical care became a right.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay. This is very important to realize this, because penicillin was around, but only if you could afford it.
Really?
What were the average ages of the rulers in the 1700s
oh, very young.
all the way through the 1900s?
Yeah.
80s.
Yeah.
What we have seen in our generation is we now live as long as the ruling class. Okay, because of that right.
Yeah.
Okay, very important.
Yeah.
Very important. Yes, Gail.
Marty, I read a lot about World War II. That's one of my favorite subjects. And I was reading the other day about when they started to draft people in the United States for World War II, and how many of the guys they had to reject because of poor health.
Yes.
They suffered, well, because of the Depression, malnutrition, their dental caries were out of control. They were just not physically fit. They had a really hard time.
That's right.
Really hard time getting guys that were healthy enough. And then they lowered the rules, so they were taking some of these rejects later on. Yeah.
So when I say, but the longer people live, the lifespan through which they can bear children is also increased.
Birth
So
control also came along too.
That's right. So be sure you take, that's why I say we tend to think of it in our current situation. Go back in time. Think of the way life was way, way back in time. And you would see that generations, you could have multiple generations. And so when I see, 200 years, this was the average life, not necessarily so. Okay. Because the average person, if they weren't privileged, they did not have. And by privilege, if you think about even in our own Bible, if we think in terms of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, look at how much wealth they accumulated during their time period. Okay, so there's a lot more to this than what first meets the eye, and that's all I'm going to say. I don't want to take up a lot of time, but to help support 400 years, I can see that. Okay, so it may not be as simple as we were thinking, because of the ages of pharaohs and the ages of kings and major leaders who are separated from the masses. Yes, go ahead, Don.
Yeah, well, we read just a few lines earlier that there were 600,000 men who were taking. And then, in addition to that, there were all the children. What was within the Hebrew group, the children, and then the women as well. So we're looking well over 1 million. So,
or we have discussed the numbers before. When we see massive numbers, it's probably better to think of many, use the English words many or many, and leave it at that, rather than to be fixated on an actual number.
right, and my point was that maybe we should be applying that same mindset to the years. I mean,
Yes.
Yeah, so we don't really know.
Yeah, because we do not understand the measures, how things were measured at that point in time.
And as a sidebar to this, not to be totally negative, but given our situation today, where we have weapons of mass destruction, and at this moment while we're chatting, we're probably 10 seconds away from the potential end of the world. I wonder what surviving Jews will look back and said, well, there were millions up until March of 2022, and then something happened.
Yeah.
Everybody got evaporated.
That we'll never know. We'll never know what those people will say. Yes, Gail.
No, you know what they're going to say, Don? They're going to say, where was God?
And we would know today that this is man doing it to man. Okay, so there's the whole discussion we had before.
When God said, I'm out of here.
This is, there's certain things that maybe we didn't learn from previous experience. That's all. Anyway, any other discussion? What about the in verse 42? Verse 42 has something interesting there.
That was for the Lord, a night of vigil.
Ricky, you want to read verse 32?
That's what I was just doing. That was for the Lord, a night of vigil to bring them out of the land of Egypt. That same night is the Lord's, one of vigil for all the children of Israel throughout the ages. Sounds like it's supposed to be a holiday, a night of vigil.
Okay, but what is this? The people themselves are concerned. They have to be very well prepared for everything. They have to keep their eyes and ears open. Right? This is their night of vigil. God too. Look at what it says.
That same night is the Lord's, one of vigil for all the children of Israel throughout the age.
Okay, that's my version says that was for the Lord, a night of vigil to bring them out of the land of Egypt. That same night is the Lord's. one of vigil for all the children of Israel throughout the ages. Does somebody have another English translation? Yes, Gail.
Mine says, it is this night to be observed for the Lord, not by the Lord, but for the Lord.
Okay, well, 4 can be either way.
Well, no, I don't think. Well, we don't have the Hebrew, so.
Okay. This is, without the rabbi here, I'm at a loss for that, because I can't read. I can read Hebrew, but I can't translate. That's the problem. Larry, do you have anything in your
Okay,
book?
well, I have Fox, which is considered one of the best translations. It is a night of keeping watch for Yahweh to bring them out of the land of Egypt. That is this night for Yahweh, a keeping watch for all the children of Israel throughout their generations.
Right. That's what I have in Plowed. Very simply, for God as well as for his people. So that God was looking out for them as well as they for themselves, and also we could say they for God. So, yeah, Gail.
Could it mean this is a night when you should be looking for God? I mean, you're looking for him. Where is he? You're looking for him in that sense.
This would be great in a movie theater, because it reminds me of the perils of Pauline. What is going to happen next? Shouldn't the people going to take this night? I'm making a joke here, but at Gail's expense. But no, but it's a very interesting commentary, because it's in Larry's the interpretation Larry spoke about. It puts that at this point, it's a pivotal point for the Jewish people. Want to ask you another question. This is sort of a new birth. Think of the experience of parents, okay, at the moment of birth of their newborn child, male or female. What goes through their mind? I know Gail was chuckling a little bit, but what goes through their mind?
When you say parents, do you mean the mother or the father? Because that's going to be very different.
Yes and no.
Oh.
There are certain aspects that are different, but there are other aspects that are going to be similar.
She's just glad to be not pregnant at the moment. That's
okay. It's over. Thank you. Sure. But what about? But what is that's the mother directed towards herself. But the minute she holds that child, what goes through the mind? What goes through the mind of the father? The minute the very first, or the grandparent. Well, if your children and you're holding that child, what goes through your mind?
You're bonding.
Everybody's
One
different,
is-
Marty. There's no one answer.
Well, I can boil it down to two:
Okay, you tell us.
gratitude
Mhm.
and future. And you can have all the different interpretations you want from those two words.
Well, gratitude, you check out all the toes and fingers. You know, this I don't.
Well, thanks. I'm done. Thank you. It's over. Thank you. I have a newborn. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And toes.
But so that's one thing. But the child represents something. It's not just you. It's not just a birth is not just the individual father, the individual mother. It's we, the father and mother, and it's also we, the child. And what is the child? It's a huge responsibility that's being accepted. It's everything has changed. Everything has changed.
I agree too.
And it's a future for that child. That's the main focus. That's parenthood. It's not, oh, I have a child. No, it's I have a child. Now I have a responsibility.
But
For
that's
shaping the life of that.
That's right. That's right. It's many ramifications.
You're very romantic, Marty. I wanted to wait until after I had a nap, and then I'll tell you how I felt about giving birth.
you talk about the responsibility to the child, and you said that life is going to change. Oh my God, life is going to change. You know, nothing will ever be the same again.
It's
You know-
also also going to show what kind of a person you and your wife are.
Always.
But that's bringing it back to the person, not to the child. We're so self-absorbed in that time. You know, we
Of
manage.
course. But
You know-
the minute you hold that baby, something changes.
Certainly did.
I notice all the guys shaking their head, yes. And but the women saying it's over. Hold that thought. Okay. Hold that thought. Yes, Don.
Marty, you're probably referring to the firstborn, but before birth control, then it was, oh, there's number 14, you know?
Okay. There you go.
If men had to have the babies, everybody would be a single child.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Well, obviously that is only held by a few because there were a lot of women who had huge
Well,
families and loved every minute of it.
They didn't know how to stop it then.
Wendy wanted to say something.
Going back to how you said men change after the baby is born. When our daughter was pregnant with our granddaughter, I was there for both births. But when they had our granddaughter, who's the oldest grandchild, I watched them. I mean, they were in the delivery room, and he was right there with her with the breathing and everything. And that, as soon as they got their baby, when the nurse put her in their arms, instantly they went from a married couple to parents. And it was such a transformation to watch it happen. And they were both, and then it was sort of earlier said, I'm not going to have another one. Now it was like, no problem, because it was a joy to see.
Yeah, it is. It's something that so now let's put ourselves in God's shoes. It's hard to do. They're very, we take up the room maybe of less than a tack, holding the whole shoe together.
Marty, can I digress for just a minute?
But what?
please?
Well, I don't want to detract.
Oh,
I'll give
never
you
mind.
the floor. But if you think of this, this is the birth of his child, a nation. So you can understand, and what he's going to do from here on out is being formed in God's mind. And also, okay, let's go back to Genesis. God goes through all his, I hate to use this term, labors. And on the seventh day has a day of rest. And this whole story now is going to shift to the buildup of also, in addition to the Exodus, what are the Jewish people going to be going to and what they are going to receive. And think now to the 10 Commandments And I don't have to go any further. Okay, because all of this is reiterated again and again through the rest of the book. Yes, Gail.
Oh, well, I
Go ahead, take us to a different story.
Well, no,
That's
no.
okay.
You're talking about pregnancies and all this sort of thing. I was thinking about unwanted pregnancies and reactions in the labor.
Oh.
That's a whole different subject. So
That
never
is,
mind.
that
Never
is.
mind. Never mind.
You know, I having seen such tragedies befall people at all ages, because for that, yeah, it is very important to discuss. That should be another topic of discussion. Having people from in not just rabbis and ministers and so on, but also the lawyers and other people involved, different organizations, but to have legitimate discussion, but not leaving out the human experience, because the human experience is what matters most, not the philosophy, not the science. It's the human being. Okay. Yes, Larry.
To follow up your thought about basically birth of a nation, where I have too many books to be.
Yeah, okay, it's okay. You're going to have the last word anyway.
Okay.
And then anybody can, any announcements after that. While Larry is looking up, are there any
Oh, yeah.
announcements?
Okay, got it.
Oh, okay. Larry has
Paul
it.
just
And then,
summarizes all of this very simply. The Exodus story defines the nation. The Passover ritual, which commemorates that story, is the enactment of membership in the nation. So I think that summarized everything we were talking about today.
thank you. Thank you.